All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us in the first of two meetings online today to talk about virtual learning at Newport Grammar School. And we're glad that you're here today. And this is a new first thing for us in terms of broadcasting a meeting live to so many people. Some of you I know are participating on Facebook Live, and some of you, on YouTube Live. And some of you are dialing in by telephone. Whichever way you got here, we're glad you're here. We hope we're able to answer some questions for you and give you some information that's going to really help you make a good decision about the route that you choose for your family this year in terms of coming back to school. Hopefully you're able to, for those of you that are on YouTube, you can see the slides that we'll be presenting from, and you'll be hearing from a couple of different people today. So here we go. A couple of housekeeping things just for those of you participating today. You may have noticed that when you joined the meeting, your microphone was automatically muted. The reason that we do that, typically in a large meeting such as this, background noise from everyone's microphone can cause a bit of a distraction for the meeting. And when you have so many on at once, it can be a little hard for folks to hear. So all the microphones have been muted, but you will have an opportunity to ask questions. If you're participating on YouTube, there is a chat function, and we'll talk more about that in just a couple of minutes, but you will be able to post questions into that chat box throughout the meeting. And then at the end of the meeting, we'll make some time available for you to get some answers to those questions. We do ask that if you chat a question to us, that it's a question that really applies to a large group of people. If you have specific family-specific questions or child-specific questions, we'd encourage you to email us or call us for that, and we can talk with you one-on-one about specific questions or concerns that you have. So use that chat box if you're on viewing us on YouTube right now. So before we start talking about our learning options today, I want to introduce myself. I'm Michael Short. I'm the principal here at Newport Grammar School. I'm also joined today by Dr. Justin Norton. Dr. Norton is our systems and assessment supervisor, and he will be overseeing a large portion of this online learning that we'll be talking about today. I also have Dustin Morrow. Mr. Morrow is our assistant principal, and he's going to be manning that chat stream today to take your questions and allow us to circle back around at the end and respond to what you have asked us. Also here today, Mrs. Sandy Burchett. Mrs. Burchett's our director of schools. She's in the room with us today as well. So we all know the playing field we're on with COVID-19, and we know there are a lot of factors at play here. This is an ever-changing situation, and I want to start today by thanking you for being so patient with us as we have adapted to this new normal that we're in. We've had to make some very unusual decisions in the last several months, and particularly in the last several weeks as we've gotten ready to start school. And so we want you to know that behind the scenes, a lot of people are working very hard to make sure this goes right this year. So we appreciate you being patient and hanging in there with us as we go that route. What we're talking about today is virtual learning. That's a new option on the table for us, for folks that are concerned about coming back to school in person. We want to tell you today what that's going to look like, and we want to tell you what options we're able to offer. So when it comes down to it, we do have two options for school this year. We have what we're calling the traditional option, where students will attend school in person, just as we have in the past. There are going to be some changes to how that looks on the ground, obviously, and we'll talk a little more about those in just a minute. The other option is virtual learning, where students will get to participate and interact with folks, both peers and teachers, in an online format, similar to what we're doing here. We'll talk about some of those platforms a little later, and Dr. Norton will share some in-depth information with you on that. But again, our goal today is to give you a snapshot of what that virtual learning will look like here at Newport Grammar School. One of the decision factors you may be considering is, well, what is school going to look like in a normal situation if you decide to come in person? So I do want to talk just a minute about some of the things that we have changed and some of the things that we have created in response to this virus to help make school go a little more smoothly in person. You might imagine that everybody in the world is concerned about cleaning and sanitation now. And one of the things that we are working hard to do is to enhance the way we do that at school. We're changing the frequency of how we clean things. We're changing our cleaning methods. We're reassigning some folks to make sure that that gets done very thoroughly for those people that do choose to come back and join us in person. We have some staff and student screening procedures that are going to be in place. Those will include things like temperature checks and questionnaires to ask folks about their current health situation. And all of those details, of course, are in our reopening plan. But there are some new procedures for staff and students to make sure that everybody coming to school is doing so in a safe manner. There will be some changes to the pickup and drop-off procedures related to the screening. Students and staff will both be screened when entering the building each morning, and that will cause our drop-off procedure to be a little different than what you're used to. And the pickup situation will be a little different as well. We want to be in the business of allowing enough space and distance between folks that we're going to change the way that pickup process looks. We're still developing that and hope to be able to announce some specifics on that very soon. We're going to be restricting access to visitors more than we have in the past. The concern being with this virus, we want to limit the number of people that are coming into contact with our students and our staff. So we are going to have some new procedures restricting access for folks that are visiting our school for non-essential purposes. We'll be doing some strategic grouping of students, both in classes and at lunch, and in the hallways for that matter. Our goal there is to be able to facilitate social distancing. We want to avoid large crowds of people congregating. We want to reduce numbers of students in a classroom and certainly numbers of students in the areas where we're going to be serving meals. So there are going to be some changes related to that in order to address that situation. We have a set of protocols that we're going to use to manage students who may come to school, and while they're at school, they may develop some symptoms that give us reason to suspect there could be a health issue. And again, all of those can be spelled out in detail in our school reopening plan. If you haven't seen the post already, I encourage you to go to newportgrammar.org and click on the link to see our complete reopening plan. There's also a video of Director Burchett, sort of a welcome back to school video that will answer some questions there as well. And of course, all of this, you understand, is still being developed and is still being refined based on the guidance we're getting from the health officials in our area, as well as the state Department of Education. So that's just a quick view of what school will look like in person here. For those of you that choose that option, we are taking every step we can to make sure we are doing that safely and responsibly. And now the moment you've been waiting for. What is virtual learning? What will that look like at Newport Grammar School? Dr. Norton is going to talk in just a minute, and I need to make sure I go ahead and unmute him here. All right, Dr. Norton, when you've unmuted, just let me know if you can hear me here.
Okay, I can hear you.
Okay.
So in contrast to what in-person school is going to look like, virtual learning is going to take place in two forms. The first one being what is referred to as synchronous. In other words, that students will have a live interaction between themselves and the teacher during the day, or asynchronous, where students will be completing assignments online, viewing videos or posts by the teacher, following instructions that the teacher posts. Our students at Newport Grammar School are also going to be interacting with a Newport Grammar School teacher and special area teacher. So all of our virtual learning will be conducted by the teachers that the students would have if they were here in person on site. Now, the question will come up: how often will students be allowed to switch between virtual and in person? How long of a commitment will be required to be able to participate in virtual learning? For our students, the decision that we made is that students will need to commit to a 9-week grading period to participate in virtual. And at the beginning and end of the 9 weeks, we can reassess and determine if a student would be better served to be taught here on site. Now, there will be no penalty or cost for switching between in-person and virtual, specifically because we are using the curriculum that we have here at our school, and we are using NGS teachers to teach our students.
All right, thank you, Dr. Norton. Sorry we got a little delayed on advancing your slides there. We had a little excitement in our broadcast room here, so we'll do better next time. Next, let's talk about registration. One of the questions we've seen a lot and heard a lot over the last couple of weeks is, what will registration look like? What will it look like if I'm an online learner? If I decide to go that route, what will it look like if I'm an in-person participant? And really, we're angling for two options here. And I'll tell you right out of the gate that the online option is going to be new for us. We've never had the capability of doing an online registration before. That is something that we're working hard to get in place over this next week or so for students in grades 1 through 8. Kindergarten registration, as you know, for those of you enrolling your child in kindergarten, has already taken place. We're also working on some testing procedures to get that process underway as well for students that will be joining us in kindergarten. But for 1st through 8th graders, we want to be able to offer an online registration process that happens through the Aspen program that we currently use. You'll be getting some information from us, hopefully within the next week or so, about setting up a parent portal. And through that parent portal, you'll be able to access all of the registration documents that you would for your student to need to start school, and all of those can be viewed and completed online. You can also enter some information that we can import into our student management system and make it a paperless process. Again, I'll tell you that that's in the works right now. We're working very hard to get that off the ground, but I want you to know that we would like for that to be an option for you, particularly for those of you that are planning to be virtual learners. Of course, we would also make that available to students who want to come to school and want to be a traditional in-person student. We would still have the option for you to complete that process online. For those of you that aren't interested in doing an online registration, we do plan on having a pickup process for registration materials where students and parents can complete that, get it signed, and then the student would bring that to school with them on the first day of school on August the 13th. So what will you need to be an online learner? We fielded this question quite a bit as well. There are a few things that you'll need in order to participate. And if you've watched the news locally and really nationally, you've seen a lot of these same descriptions come up. Obviously, if you choose online for your children, you'll need to have access to a device. Each individual student will need access to their own device. That device could be a desktop computer that you already have. It could be a laptop. It could be a Chromebook. Any of those, of course, would need to have internet capability. And those are our preferred devices. Those are the devices that we found really work best for doing the kinds of activities that we're asking students to do in this virtual learning environment. We will say that tablets may work for some tasks, but they do have limits. With a tablet, oftentimes you're not able to print. With a tablet, sometimes you're not able to access certain programs and certain platforms that students will need to be able to access in order to complete the assigned work. And of course, cell phones, most people do have a cell phone. A lot of people have smartphones and can access the internet and browsers and so forth. But we found that the cell phone capability is very limited in terms of online learning. And I've listed a few of the reasons here. Screen size, obviously. Cell phones typically don't have a very high processor power, which means they run very slowly. And they're limited on the kinds of programs that they can operate, even more than tablets. So again, desktop computers, laptops, or Chromebooks are what are the preferred devices. And in the end, they'll end up causing you less hassle, probably, than the others will. You're going to need broadband internet access. I think most people are beyond the days of dial-up. Certainly when I was in school, that was the only thing available, and we all learned to live with slow internet speeds. But these days, in the world we live in education, high-speed internet is very important for online learners. The providers in our area are Newport Utilities. If you're in an area that is served by Newport Utilities, that may be an option. In the city of Newport and some other areas, Charter Communication is an option for internet, and as well as Comcast in some of our outlying areas. Other options may include satellite internet, and there are a few others. But that is an important consideration also with choosing virtual. Just like in school, or just like when studying at home, it's important for students that are learning to have a quiet area where they can do so, an area that's free of distractions. Personally, I know that during this close down that we had back in the spring, some of the meetings that I participated in were held at home. I have two young boys who at a moment's notice could come bursting into the room and screaming and crawling in my lap, and that could be a real distractor for me when I was trying to have some of those important meetings. And the same is true for students that may be interacting with their classes online. It's important that there's a quiet space that they have to go to their bedroom, maybe an area of the house where there's a door that can be closed and so forth. An important thing to consider for virtual learners. And the last thing on the list here is access to a webcam. Now, a lot of newer laptop computers and Chromebooks already have the webcam built in as a part of the device. If you're using a desktop computer or maybe an older laptop or an older device, it may be necessary for you to get another external webcam that works along with your computer. Part of the interaction, as you'll hear Dr. Norton talk about in just a minute, is face-to-face interaction, just like we're doing now. And it will be necessary for you to have a way to do that on the device by way of a webcam. I think I'm getting ready to flip back to Dr. Norton. We're going to talk about some of the ways that we may be able to help you as a school in addressing some of these things that we need. So Dr. Norton, I'll turn it back over to you, and I'll do a better job of driving the slide this time.
Okay, thank you. So as far as the things that you are required to have for virtual learning, here's what the school can provide to you to be able to make virtual learning possible. First of all, on site, we currently have one-to-one access where all of our students in grades 1 through 8 have access to a Chromebook, a school-owned Chromebook here on site. We will make access available to any student that is doing virtual learning in K through 8. We'll make access available to those students if they need a Chromebook. Our virtual learners will have access to that Chromebook, and that Chromebook has a built-in webcam. That way virtual learning can take place. You would need to request that laptop or that Chromebook, and what we will do is once we know how many of those that we are needing to make available, we will provide information to you about how we will distribute those. The expense for any damages or the loss of these devices that are owned by the school will be the responsibility of the parent or the guardians. However, we are contracting with a company that will make optional insurance available to you at $23 per device. That insurance covers the entire school year, and that insurance is non-refundable, of course, but that insurance does not have a claim limit. And we will provide that information to any parent that signs up for virtual learning so that they can log on, purchase that insurance if they choose to do so, and get further information about it. Now, we also may have a limited number of hotspots that we can provide for those who do not have internet at their home. These are cellular hotspots. We can make those available on a first-come basis, but we are limited in the number that we do have available. So the next thing we want to talk about is going to be what Google Classroom looks like, what we'll be using for our virtual learning platform. So Google Classroom is essentially a virtual classroom where the students will participate in learning activities, they will submit assignments, they will interact with their teacher. All of our NGS teachers as of this school year are working towards becoming Google certified. Right now, we have several that have completed this, and by the time that school starts, the majority of our teachers will have it, and more than likely all of our teachers will possibly have it by the end of this first semester. Now, with Google Classroom, teachers will be able to post assignments to students, provide them with feedback, assign the grades to the assignments. And students can also not only complete and submit assignments, they can ask for help. They can receive this feedback. They can get in and access grades, see how they're doing on the work that they're completing. They can also work collaboratively on any assignments with their peers, either being assigned to work with peers that are working here at school or others that are working away at home. With the Google Suite, students are able to interact, leave comments for one another, feedback, collaborate on the same document or the same PowerPoint or presentation with one another. Now, some of the work with Google Classroom is work that could be completed offline. So if the internet connection is lost, the work that the student's doing on the laptop will be uploaded at the moment that the internet connection is restored. So if there is a need to disconnect a hotspot or something along those lines, work isn't necessarily lost because the internet connection is lost. And then we also have the option that if a student would be better served to print off some of the work and then scan it or take a picture of it to upload later to submit to the teacher, that can be an option as well. And that's where also in the situation where you may not have a scanner at home, having access to that webcam could be used to take a picture of the assignment to upload it back into Google. Now, the next thing we're going to look at is what the virtual learning tools we'll have in place are. So first of all of our students have a Google for Education account. Our students in last year's 1st through 8th grade were already participating in Google, had Google logins, and had access to all the tools that they needed. Our students who are new to our school will be assigned Google accounts, and that information will be provided to you. Having access to Google Education, that suite of tools is actually going to take away the need for some of the things that would typically be needed in other situations, such as needing Microsoft Office. There won't be a need for things like Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, Excel, because all those things are built into Google with tools like Docs and Sheets and Slides. And then all 4 of our core subjects, ELA, Math, Science, and Social Studies, all have access to an online textbook. They all have access to tools that go along with that textbook and other activities that can be assigned there as well. So all tools that will be needed can be provided by the school, including a Chromebook, all the learning tools, the platform, and a webcam if necessary. So let's take a look at what a virtual school day will look like. Now, this will vary depending upon the grade level that the child is in, including varying in time and varying in which subjects will be covered and varying in structure. Now, students will be participating in a mix of synchronous, again, that's where students interact live with the teacher, and asynchronous learning activities, where the student will complete something and submit it, possibly watching a video of a short lesson or a demonstration by the teacher on how to complete an activity. With the synchronous activities that are in person, students will have the opportunity to ask questions, interact with the teacher, get feedback from the teacher with an in-person tone there, and that's where the webcam may be necessary. That way the student could, if necessary, hold up a printed assignment to let the teacher see what they're doing, or a printed activity that they're working on, or a physical activity that they may be making or doing. But also the students could screen share their docs with the teacher so that the teacher can see what is being worked on and get feedback that way. Students are also going to be completing assignments that are going to be very much similar and along the same lines of what is going to be completed by the students in person. The expectation here is that our students at home and our students in school should be on the same topics, the same activities. That way, if there is a need for a student to transition either to virtual or from virtual, the student will still be caught up where their peers here at school are. And then activities for virtual learning will be required to be submitted every day in order for them to count. So some more specifics about what the day will look like. For grades 3 through 8, school will be 6.5 hours of instruction plus 30 minutes for lunch. The way this will work, students will complete activities in ELA, which is language arts, math, science, social studies, RTI intervention, and PE and related arts, such as art, music, guidance, and technology and library. In grades 1 through 2, and I'll get into more specifics on what that's going to look like in just a second. Grades 1 through 2, again, 6.5 hours of instruction each day, plus 30 minutes of a break for lunch, including ELA, math, a science social studies split, phonics instruction, RTI, and then again, PE and the mixture of related arts. In grade kindergarten, students will have 4 hours of instruction each day, plus a 30-minute break for lunch, with ELA, math, phonics, RTI, and again, PE and related arts connected in there as well. When we say 6.5 hours of instruction, what we are talking about here is students will be working on a variety of activities, both synchronous and asynchronous. That may include a short instructional portion by the teacher, and then the activities and assignments that go along with that. So what we will be doing is, for a class, for instance, in ELA, the teacher may have a 15 or 20-minute instruction and interaction with the students, or a posted video for instruction, and then the student may have the remainder of time to work on an activity or a homework assignment that will be submitted at the end of the day. In this particular case, it will be an estimated hour of time that the students will be working in grades 3 through 8, a little bit longer for ELA and math in grades 1 through 2. And the amount of time that the student takes will be the decider in how long of the instructional day the student actually has. But the design will be that the teachers will provide approximately 6.5 hours in total of both instruction, activities, and assignments for the student to complete. So the same, but no more than what students will complete here on site. So on our next slide, we're going to talk about what attendance expectations are. So each day, students will be required to attend either synchronously or asynchronously their classes. Teachers will be reporting attendance each day, and daily participation through the completion of assignments and the interaction with the teacher will be necessary to be counted as present. Now, in the event that a student needs to be absent from virtual learning, documentation has to be submitted to the teacher, preferably within 24 to 48 hours of the absence, in order for it to be classified as excused. You can submit these excuses digitally, either through scanning it, taking a picture of it, having it faxed to the school, or you do also have the option, if you prefer, to come drop it off at the school at the receptionist. You can do that as well. State attendance and truancy laws will still apply in this case. We are required to report students' attendance even in virtual settings, and students are required to attend the same number of school days. The same type of excuses that are allowed for in-person learning will be allowed for home learning, which includes doctor's notes, dentist notes, court excuses, and also up to 3 parent notes per semester. Now, per state guidelines, students in 3 through 8, at this point in time, we have been told, will likely have to come on campus in the spring in order to complete TN ready testing. If that does change, we will communicate that information with you. But as of right now, we are being told that 3 through 8 students will have to come on site, even if they're virtual learners, in the spring semester, in the late spring, in order to complete TN ready testing. But again, we will share any changes to that if they are announced. Okay, and I'm going to turn it back over to you, Mr. Short, so that we can look at our next slide here with some frequently asked questions.
Sounds great. Thanks, Dr. Norton. All right. Some of these frequently asked questions have been pre-typed because we got them on the way into this meeting, and some of them Mr. Morrow has been collecting from our chat. So the first one I'd like to address, the question was, will tuition be different for virtual learners? And the answer is no. Tuition rates are going to be the same for both in-person and virtual learners. And the reason for that is even though we're teaching virtually, we're providing the access to teachers and interacting in the same manner as if the student was here in person. And the work expectation is identical in terms of what we're expecting from online versus traditional participants. So yes, tuition will be the same regardless of the route that we take, whether traditional or virtual. The next question is, if my child is a virtual learner, how can my child get meals? Well, the answer there is, if you choose virtual, you will be able to make arrangements with our cafeteria manager, Christina Lease, and we will be able to arrange for a curbside pickup for your meals for the time that you are a virtual learner. So again, virtual learners do have access to meals, and those can be picked up curbside with making previous arrangements with our cafeteria. The next question, and I've had this a couple of times. I'm going to borrow Mr. Morrow's note sheet here. If you start learning in person and circumstances change, can you switch to virtual? Well, we all know that circumstances are changing very frequently, and the answer to that question is yes. And there's a but coming. We are going to allow folks to change either from traditional to virtual or from virtual to traditional, but we're only going to allow that at each 9 weeks end. So in other words, if you commit to doing virtual learning at the beginning of the fall, you'll need to be able to commit to that for the first 9 weeks of school. Toward the end of that first 9 weeks, there will be a window during which you can express your desire to move to traditional. And then when the second 9 weeks begins, you could start as a traditional, or your child could start as a traditional child, and vice versa. If you start the year as a traditional student and the end of the 9 weeks comes, then you want to transition to virtual, we could make that happen for you at that point as well. Our thinking behind that is we want teachers to be able to have some consistency in planning. We will, for instance, be telling them that they have a certain number of students per class. We will be telling them who those students are. And we really want to make it so that teachers can prepare for the number of people we tell them to prepare for in either online or in traditional settings. A situation where students were coming and going for the first 2 to 3 to 4 weeks of school could easily become very unmanageable for teachers in terms of planning assignments and instruction and being able to interact effectively with their classes. Another question, Dr. Norton, I may pitch this to you. The question is, does damages include software? I think we're talking about damages to the school-owned device. Do you want to take that one?
Okay, yeah. So the insurance is specifically for the hardware, specifically for the devices themselves. The software itself should not necessarily be something that could be damaged because it will be access to a website or access to something that is a virtual platform. So software shouldn't be something that would be possible for the student to accidentally damage or lose.
Okay, thank you. Another question about school supplies. A couple of weeks ago, we were able to notify teachers that we are able to provide a large portion of the class supplies, some of which we've always asked for parents and families to provide. So I would encourage you to check your teacher's webpage at newportgrammar.org. We've asked teachers to update those pages to represent what will be provided by the school so that we can try and alleviate some of the burden for parents during this stressful time. At this point, after school clubs, we'll need to get back to you on after school clubs and what that will look like for virtual learners once we have a little better idea as we get closer to the start of school. Now's your chance. If you're participating on YouTube and you have a question that you've not shared with us yet, if you'll go ahead and enter that into the chat box on your YouTube video and submit that. As they say, our telephones are standing by. Mr. Morrow is here and he is collecting those questions, and we'll be happy to answer those for you during this meeting if we can. I'll also let you know that there is a second meeting today. It'll happen at 5 o'clock. We'll be covering the same content that we talked about here this morning, but if we receive questions between now and then that we can answer for the full group, we'll try to incorporate those answers into the second meeting this afternoon. So you're welcome to attend that meeting as well if you would like.
Okay, Mr. Short, I see a couple of questions that have popped up that I could provide an answer to. One of those being a question about whether or not students can still receive services such as IEPs, OT, and speech if they are virtual learners. Those are things that will still be available to you. You will need to contact Amy Burchett, the supervisor of federal programs, for specific questions about your student, your learner. If you have those, she'll be able to give you more specifics. There will be set and assigned times if a student does qualify for OT or PT services. There still will be requirements for IEP meetings. She can give you more specifics on those. And again, that is Amy Burchett, the federal program supervisor here at Newport Grammar School.
Thank you. Still taking questions if you'd like to ask something related to virtual learning or traditional learning for that matter. We're here to help.
I see another question on here about picking up papers to sign up for virtual learning. There is going to be information on our next slide that we're going to talk about after we go through the question section that will address that. Mr. Short can give you some more specifics on that one here in just a moment.
Okay, we've gotten another question. Will my teacher be broadcasting daily from the classroom? The answer to that's going to vary by teacher. We will have some teachers that will be very engaged in broadcasting, maybe not 5 days a week, but maybe certain days of the week for a period of time. We may have other teachers who will do the majority of their lesson presentation by pre-recording their instruction and then having that video available for students to watch at their convenience.
And to step in just a second, Mr. Short, just to clarify for anyone who did have a question, this will not be a video of the other students that are in the classroom. This will be solely a video of the teacher providing instruction for your student. If they are virtual, it will not include the students who are in person here at school in the video.
Very good point. Thank you. All right, let's move to our next slide. This is the slide that is probably the most important for those of you considering virtual learning moving forward. And that is, when do I need to commit? When do I need to let the school know whether I'll be proceeding with virtual learning instead of traditional? First of all, we will say that for us, no contact from you means that we will assume that you intend to have your child or your family do traditional learning. In order to participate in virtual learning, there is a virtual learning contract. And we are asking that that be completed fairly quickly because, as you can imagine, we really need to know more exact numbers of how many students are participating in either pathway so that we have a chance to prepare for that and to do the best job that we can in providing those services. So we're asking all of those virtual learning contracts to be completed and submitted by Monday. That's Monday, July the 27th. So that gives you really 3 days to look at all of the information, make a decision, and again, remember that decision is a 9-week commitment. So it's something that you'll really want to give careful thought to. We didn't want to lock someone into this choice for the entire year. As we know, this situation surrounding COVID-19 is very fluid and lots of things change daily. So those things may impact your decisions. And we want to give you a window to do that at the end of each 9 weeks. Also want to let you know that there is no penalty or cost associated with switching between in-person or virtual learning. I know that there are some other districts in our area that are charging sort of a fine or a fee to move from one to the other. That has mainly to do with the type of platform that's being used to present the online instruction. Some of those are fee-based platforms, and the district is essentially paying for those services. So that is not the case for us. There is no penalty or cost for switching, and the only thing to be concerned about there is that 9-week commitment. So the virtual learning contract, the link to that will be posted after our evening meeting today. Dr. Norton, am I correct on that?
That's correct.
Okay. And so you will find that on our website. We'll make it easy for you to find. We'll also send a link to that from Dojo and Facebook so that you are able to find it quickly. Approach it as you're buying a car or signing a mortgage for a house. There's a lot of fine print on that document that you'll want to be familiar with and make sure you understand what it is you're signing up for. There are several assurances at the bottom where we're asking you to initial that you have read and understand that. And by those initials, those are equivalent to an electronic signature. So once we've received those, we will have a way to contact you. We'll have your email address, and we'll be able to reach out to you directly with news about virtual learning and some more finalized plans as we move forward. We've been talking a few more minutes. Have any other questions come forth? We'll wait just a few more moments if you have questions that you'd like to ask us as part of this meeting today.
And Mr. Short, while we're waiting on those questions to come in, if there are any additional questions, I do want to take a moment just to say we appreciate everyone that has taken the time to check in with us and given us time to prepare what virtual learning is going to look like. We know this is a big decision for our parents to make on whether or not they want their students to participate in virtual learning or in-person learning. And we are doing our best to make sure that we provide the best possible virtual learning that we can for our students while following state guidelines. And again, if you do have those individual questions that you would rather submit specifically to us, feel free to do so if there are questions that you don't feel that you want to ask in front of the entire group.
We have a question about masks. There was someone asking, will the mask decision be made in time for a decision to commit to virtual learning by Monday, the 27th? You may know that our school board met in regular session on Monday this week, and the decision of whether or not to mandate masks for students or staff was discussed at that meeting, and that item is going to be discussed again during a special called meeting in the next couple of days. And at this point, we were going to wait to get guidance from our school board before we commit to whether or not there will be a mask mandate for teachers and or staff. So as soon as that information is available to us, we're hoping that it will be available maybe during the day on the 27th. That's my understanding at this point. But as soon as we have information on that, we will announce it just as quickly as we can. The question now is the virtual day 8:05 to 3:05? Not necessarily. As Dr. Norton has mentioned, some of the activities that students are asked to complete are asynchronous, which means the student could conceivably complete them at any time during the day. Obviously, if there's a synchronous interaction with the teacher where things are happening in real time, yes, there would have to be some structure to that, and it would have to happen at a specific time. So that again is going to depend on the particular teacher. It may depend on the day of the week or the time of the year, depending on what's being covered in class and what the topic and the subject area is. Okay, I don't see any other questions, but once again, before we close out today, I want to echo what Dr. Norton has said. We really appreciate you being here today. All of us here in the room, all of us, the administrative staff, our teachers, we're all working very hard to make sure this is a smooth year, despite all of the craziness that surrounds us from day to day concerning this virus. And we are working hard to make this as smoothly, to go as smoothly as possible for parents and students as well. We want you to know that. Okay, there are no other questions, and we've been at this for about 45 minutes, so we will end our meeting. Once again, I'll invite you to join the evening meeting today at 5 o'clock. You can access the same link that you're using right now, and we will present the same information. We would also ask you to pass the word on to someone who may not have watched with us today or joined by telephone, to have them join that evening meeting as well. The information will be on our website, and we'll be able to maybe answer some more questions between now and then that we can include in that second session. Anything else from you, Dr. Norton?
All right, I think that's it. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you soon. Thank you, Chad.